One of the things that we encourage people to do as often as they have an opportunity is anytime the coach is up in the air for being serviced or you have access to the bottom of the coach, it's a good idea to take advantage of that opportunity to drain your air tanks. Air system maintenance has been a huge problem for a lot of owners, and it's because they either didn't know or didn't understand that moisture plays a very big role in the quality of the working parts, but also you need to check the air system to ensure that you are going to be safe. The way to check the air system for function as well as look for moisture is start with the wet tank, which is this tank. In this particular coach, it's on the driver's side over the drive axle. I'm going to release the air pressure in the tank. We're looking for moisture. We have completely drained the air out of this wet tank on this coach, and there is no moisture present at all. So we're going to close the petcock and move to the next tank. Alright, now we're at the primary tank on this particular coach. It hasn't been drained. We're going to open it up, and we should expect to see a lot of air pressure come out. Alright, this tank has been completely drained of air, and the good news is that it was full of air when we opened up the valve. Even though we drew the air off of the wet tank, this particular tank still held air, so it tells us the protection and check valves are functioning as intended. No moisture came out of this tank either. If you're going to find moisture, typically it's going to start with the wet tank, which was the first tank that we drained. If you find moisture in subsequent tanks, it could mean you have a very substantial problem. We're now at the secondary tank. The last tank drained was the primary tank. When we open this valve, we should get a rush of air. There should be no moisture because there was none in the previous tanks. So let's see how we do. Like the two previous tanks, this tank has now been fully drained of air, and it tells us that the protection and check valves between the primary and secondary air tank are functioning, and it also tells us that we have no moisture in the system. We're now going to switch over, and we're going to do the accessory air tank, which is installed by Prevost. I'm going to put the light over here. Alright, the accessory tank is the last tank in line. Again, we should have full air pressure in this tank and no moisture. The accessory tank was full of air pressure, which it should be, and no moisture was present. It's now been completely drained. And the important thing to remember in doing this exercise, which if you were timing us, it takes less than 5 minutes to do the entire coach, and you're checking for moisture, which can be damaging to the system. You're checking for the protection and check valve functions, which has to be right. If any of the protection valves have failed, you have the potential, in the case of a broken line or any kind of damage to the air system, of draining all of the air out of all of the tanks, and that leaves you with no protection or no braking. As a coach that is well equipped, is operating in perfect condition, when everything is working, even if you lose all of the air pressure from one of the tanks, the other tanks will still provide you with air for keeping your emergency brake released and allowing you to have some stopping power so that you can deal with an emergency. Like the two previous tanks, this tank has now been fully drained of air, and it tells us that the protection and check valves between the primary and secondary air tank are functioning, and it also tells us that we have no moisture in the system. We're now going to switch over, and we're going to do the accessory air tank, which is installed by Prevost. I'm going to put the light over here. Like the two previous tanks, this tank has now been fully drained of air, and it tells us that the protection and check valves between the primary and secondary air tank are functioning, and it also tells us that we have no moisture in the system.